It's spring training. You know what that means. We have an extension. We have a prospect threatening to make a team outright that we were not expecting. And we've got a bunch of crappy injury news.
Yep.
We're also, by the way, going to preview the National League West. We're going to walk through what those rosters look like, ID a possible X factor for those teams, and a predicted order of finish at the end. It is the Just Baseball Show. As always, it is brought to us by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Today is Monday, March 10th. He's Aram. I'm Jack. We've got a lot like Lawrence Butler, Cam Smith, Francisco Alvarez, Grayson Rodriguez. This really does feel like baseball season is getting going now. And it's like a lot of it's negative off the top, right? Because it's injury related. And we saw the Stanton and Garrett Cole thing, and Yankee fans are already upset, understandably so. But it does feel like baseball season is kind of building up. And we are at that point of spring training where, hey, pitchers are going four now. Like Clay
Yep.
Holmes looked awesome across 3 2/3. Position players are going to start to play the whole game. Like, I don't know. This feels a little bit more like summertime that I've felt in 6, 7 months.
And the injury thing sucks, but it's kind of that weird in between time where you're ramping up, but you're still trying to like not play it 100%. I almost feel like that's sometimes where you can have injuries happen more. And just, unfortunately, that's the time of year here where we're starting to get an idea of, who's going to have what players available, maybe guys that were already on the shelf, how quickly are they going to get back? You're getting those updates, but yeah, it's getting real. Like this week, I could really feel it. It was holy shit. Spring breakout's already coming up, so I'm getting ready for that and already starting to map all that out. Was not even really feeling like that was anytime soon. And yeah, and then you're seeing the starters start to stay in the game longer. You're starting to see these pitchers really cut loose, and it's fun. It's fun. The negative side is this is always when we see the injuries start to trickle through because
Yeah.
it's just the nature of the beast. And honestly, if we don't do this like little segment here to catch people up, you'll probably miss some. Like you're gonna probably say some injuries that I missed. Unfortunately, there's so many this time of year that you almost forget. Like, oh wait, you're watching the game on opening day, and you're like, oh wait, that guy's out for now.
Yeah.
And so that's the frustrating part, and that's why when people are a little bit upset about like slow off seasons and stuff from their teams, there can be moves to be made here, and like injuries will expedite that aggressiveness. Like we might see some random trades or signings or whatever over the next couple weeks as teams just find out what their situation is as opening day approaches.
I want to pull this up because you mentioned it a couple weeks ago, and I did the dive when the Marlins were playing the Braves in spring training. Matt Olson was in the lineup, and I wanted to remind myself of the timeline that Matt Olson got to Atlanta with and
I
Freddie
think,
Freeman got to LA with because it all happened in like a quick domino effect. March 14th, 2022, Matt Olson was traded to Atlanta. March 14th, it's March
yeah,
10th. March 15th, Olson signed his extension, and on March 18th, Freddie signed with the Dodgers. Like
yeah,
that all happened very, very late in 2022. Now, granted, that was a lockout year. I understand that that all has to happen quickly, but they were ready to go in
yeah.
2022. It's not like they weren't fine. And we're at the point in Major League Baseball where I know Yasmani Grandal and James McCann are not just sitting there. So if the Mets come calling, Grandal could be ready to play on opening day if they prefer that over Luis Torrens, or McCann can be ready to play on opening day if they prefer that over Luis Torrens. And we're going to
Yeah.
talk about the Mets situation. We're going to talk about the Yankee situation all in a moment. But I do want to start with the A's paying somebody because that is kind of
Yeah.
fun. The A's paid somebody else. They paid Brent Rooker this offseason, and they paid Lawrence Butler 7 years, $65.5 million, a club option through an eighth season. So at the minimum, it takes Butler through 2 free agent years. If they exercise the club option, that would be 3 free agent years. And Lawrence Butler is a guy that you've documented very well, somebody that struggled out of the gates in 24 and then turned in one of the better second halves in all of Major League
Yeah.
Baseball in 2024. You're buying that that's real and that wasn't just hot. And the A's are legitimately, literally
Yeah.
buying that it was real and not hot.
And it's funny, like a team that hasn't spent, and they want to spend a little bit more as they gear up for the move to Vegas and try to, cozy up to the entire political side of that whole thing, right? Oh, look, we're different. When we go to Vegas, we're going to spend more money, blah blah blah. This is the smart way to do it, right? Spend the money where you can leverage arbitration years and lock up players that you believe in. There's some risk if you are unsure about what Butler's if it really is going to translate. But as we talked about, pretty large sample of success. He's also doing great in spring training again. I think that was enough for them to see like, okay, full off season, pick back up, and those swing adjustments that he made look great again. It's really, I don't think much of a risk at all anyways, but maybe for the A's standards of spending, like they're guaranteeing him $14 million, $14.5 million in 2030, and then $16.5 million in 2031 with the club option in 2032 of 20 million, which I think they will pick up because I think he's going to be a good hitter for a long time. But when you see a player with his talent, the talent was never a question. We've talked
No,
about that for
ever.
a long time. You loved him as a prospect. Like
Dude, when
that,
he was like kind of a no name in high A, we were like, this
yeah,
guy's awesome. Yeah.
he had the swag, but like you loved the swing and the tools and the power, and you'd always talked about him. And the futures game was one of the guys you were most excited about. But when you see the talent also being paired with
Mhm.
a tangible ability, like hey, he was horrible in the first half. A lot
Yeah.
of guys are when they first get up there. To be able to be bad, make the swing adjustments mechanically that you need to make, and then sustain those over 80 games. This wasn't 30 games. This was 80 games where he was really good. And now carry that over, and we're seeing it in spring training again. We're going to link it in the episode description, like the article I wrote there of, on Lawrence Butler's swing changes. But I'm all in on the adjustments that he made. As you said, clearly the A's are too. And this is just great for the ball club. Again, I don't want to say great for Fisher fans because it's still an unfortunate situation in general for A's fans. But you have Rooker locked up for a long time now. You have another middle of the order bat here, and like in Lawrence Butler, that's locked up for a while here too. They've signed some other free agents. You can start to see the vision of a team that's going to be in good shape for the next 5, 6, 7 years. We'll see if maybe they lock up Mason Miller after deciding not to trade him. At the deadline last year, and the injury obviously helped. In terms of keeping him in town, but just to add a little bit more context to Butler, by the way, specifically to the last 40 games, he was great for, again, 80 plus. But the guy over his last 40 games had an 860 OPS, and every single batted ball marker skyrocketed, and it was a strikeout rate less than 20%. I mean, it really was night and day for him. And I think at 24 years old, he could still be getting better and better as a defender, as just approach wise. Like he's still just 24 for the entire first half of the season.
Yeah. I wanted to figure out a way to kind of pose this as a would you rather, but they're just such different contracts. But I look at the Lawrence Butler deal and I view it very similarly to what the Tigers did with Colt Keith. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I really don't see much of a downside to this. And Keith, the number's just so small over 6 years. It was six for $28.6 million. That's minuscule. But then you add on all the club options. So I guess for the sake of the exercise, I could throw you this. Would you rather? Would you rather have Colt Keith on a 9 year, $82 million deal or Butler on this 7 year, $65 million deal? Like
Probably a little recency bias
yeah, maybe.
because I think Keith is going to take a big step forward this year. Like I always talked about him as one of the safest bats in the minor leagues, but with how dynamic Butler can be and the contract being a little bit more favorable, I think a 24-year-old Lawrence Butler is probably the answer.
Interesting. So I think I'm with you, but Keith, I know he's going to hit for the entirety of this contract.
And it's safer because they're all club options where Butler is guaranteed, again, guaranteed $30 million after arbitration years, $31 million really after the arbitration years, plus a $4 million buyout. So he's guaranteed the 2 years that he gave up of free agency, he didn't give him up particularly cheap. Like it is a good deal for him where it's $34 million guaranteed, $35 million guaranteed. So like that's pretty darn good. Whereas, if for whatever reason Keith doesn't become the hitter that we and the Tigers think he can be,
Yeah.
you can just decline those club options. So I think most front offices would probably take as you lay it out, actually, like the Keith deal because it's safer.
And they can get out of it whenever they want if it gets moderately expensive. I think like
Yeah.
the largest guaranteed amount of money for Colt Keith, I had this on Spot Track here. The largest guaranteed amount of money that Keith will see is $5.3 million in ARB 2 and ARB 3 that are washed out. And then it's a club at 10, a club at 13, and a club at 15 in his age 28, 29, and 30 seasons. Like that was a
that
Scott
deal's
Harris
better.
masterclass.
That deal's better. I mean, you could pick up the club at 10 even if you're still unsure at that point, and then if he has an okay year, you
Yeah.
could decline the club at 13. Like each year you're in the driver's seat completely. So yeah, from a contract perspective, I take it back. That Keith deal is just team. It's almost two team favorable.
Regardless, every single team can do a deal like this with good young players, and we're seeing this influx of young players. Pre-arb, like the pre-arb pool of players, is as good as it's been in a very, very
Oh yeah,
long time. And on 28, 29 teams, I don't want to like single one out because even the White Sox would have a pre-arb guy that I think they would be willing to do that. Like they could give Schultz a little extension right now, and I wouldn't bat an eye because it's like, okay,
yeah,
yeah, makes sense. No, lock up a pitcher that you think is going to be awesome. So I'll venture to say all 30 teams have a guy in pre-arb right now that they can lock up at a logical amount of money. And I just think about Chorio in Milwaukee. Like that deal just objectively makes sense for everybody. Everybody's trying to do this subdued version of Atlanta. And I think it
yeah.
makes a ton of sense to
Which you
just
should.
follow the Anthopoulos model because that is a sustainable way of retaining talent.
Well, and even the A's in Vegas, right? It's not Vegas is a smaller market. So like even when they're doing well and hopefully drawing well and all that good stuff, like they're not going to be competing revenue wise and spending wise with a lot of these other teams. So when you have the opportunity, it's tough though, because you got to pick your spot immediately. If you
Yeah.
wait a year, it could be too late. Like if Lawrence Butler does what he did in the second half last year, where he was one of the best hitters in baseball and duplicates that, over this season, he probably would say, "Nah, I'm going to ride it out to free agency at this point," or the price would just be significantly more. But yeah, like I look at the White Sox. If Edgar Caro comes out swinging and looks great, why not something similar to like
Give
Keibert
him
Ruiz
the
deal?
Keibert Ruiz. Yeah,
Which
exactly.
it didn't work great for the Nationals there, but if it was 100% hit rate, players, the negotiations would be totally different too. So like teams would probably be leveraged in an even more ridiculous manner. So of course, some of these pre-arb deals are not always going to work out. That's why players take the guaranteed money.
Exactly.
But most of the time, it's going to work out for these teams, and that's why they do it.
Right. And people are looking at Ozzy Albies and it's like, oh, he's getting killed. And then you look at Keibert Ruiz and it's like, oh, I guess the Nats didn't want to do that. But for every Keibert Ruiz, you have a Hunter Green. Like Hunter Green in Cincinnati is on one of the more underrated extensions that we've seen in a
You have
long
you have
time.
4 or 5 of them, to be honest, and like even like a Sandy Alcantara, like that
Yeah, of
he got
course.
paid. Like his agent did a pretty good job for if you're going to sell out, you know post arbitration years. Like Sandy's making 17 M's, but like that is a bargain of all
Of
bargains.
course. Yeah. And I look at, I mean, what's happening in Atlanta too. Like Strider got decently paid for what
And
he
he
did.
2 elbow surgeries. It's got to be so calming, at least for him, to have guaranteed money.
Of course.
But at the same time, the Braves, I don't think they're too worried about it. Like, because when
No.
he's on the mound, he's going to be good. So it goes both ways. And I think the biggest thing too that people probably overlook is, you go from a lot of times pre-arb, instead of making the minimum, you get 1.5, $2 million, and now you're able to like buy a house if you're a player and like build your life a little bit more.
One of my favorite conversations on that front was Dylan Cease. And Cease had this conversation with Taylor Davis and I. And Cease was saying, it's weird because you're in this great situation and you're in the best financial situation of your entire life, but like that pre-arb league minimum goes quick because you got to pay out a lot of people. You want to take care of your family. You got to pay your agent fee. You got to cover housing for a season. You got to cover housing for spring training. Like this
You're
dissipates
you're
real quick.
training. Your
Yeah,
your,
you're
your
training.
standards are higher. Yes, they give you more help, but like you also are going to push yourself to a higher standard and pay a lot more for your food and your and everything. Yeah, that 700,000 can go quick when you're living that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. So that was one of the more eye-opening conversations I've had about it. It's like, yeah, that can go quick. So, even doubling that 700, it sounds so small over the course of big league contracts, but that is something that really benefits. So, very happy for Lawrence Butler on that front. One more thing before we get to the injury slew. There's a guy balling for the Astros right now, like
Yeah.
balling, balling. And I didn't get to see him play today. I saw Fromber struggle again today. But I saw Cam Smith hit a ball that was 6 inches away from being a grand slam dead central. It would have been Cam's third homer of this spring. Cam Smith, who was the headliner of the Kyle Tucker return, going from the Cubs to the Astros, is 8 for 13 in spring training to this point. He's walked 5 times. He's K'd twice in 18 plate appearances. And he has a triple, 2 homers, and 7 driven in. It's a small sample, but in 18 plate appearances, Cam Smith is slashing 615, 722, 1231. That's a 953 OPS. I will say eye test, he's passing with flying colors. I saw that guy stand next to Jose Altuve, and it looked like Aaron Judge was standing
Yeah.
next to Jose Altuve. He's a grown man. And Jim Bowden of The Athletic and SiriusXM, MLB Network Radio, tweeted this on Sunday. We're at Astros camp today, and one thing is for sure. Both general manager Dana Brown and manager Joe Espada made it clear Cam Smith will be given every opportunity to win the right field job. And Jose Altuve told Eduardo Perez that it told Eduardo Perez and I, there we go.
Mhm.
Okay. He used the ampersand. I got tripped up there. That he hopes Smith makes the team. Like, wow, man. And if
Yeah.
Altuve is impressed, Altuve, by the way, the guy that moved to left field to make room for Bregman, is impressed with Cam Smith, wants him to be on the team, and Dana Brown and Joe Espada are both acknowledging that he is putting himself in a position to make the team. This is Super Jordan Walker 2023, is this not?
Yes, it is. And Cam Smith is I think a better bat to ball guy at this stage. And again, it's unfair to Walker because he's a high school guy that's fallen through the ranks and had to learn a new position as well. But it is very similar. And I want to say this too. Like we talked about the Kyle Tucker trade conversations and things like that. I know that the Astros were never going to re-sign Kyle Tucker, but we've seen, as we just saw with Alex Bregman, they are more than happy to get that last year out of them and just let them walk. Like the Astros are okay with that because they trust their ability to recycle and just be able to get new young talent in there and sign where they can and whatever. They were only going to trade this final year of Kyle Tucker for a return that they couldn't say no to, given the circumstances. And that's exactly what this was. We've talked about it a bunch. You have a guy that could hit 25 plus home runs for you at third base and Paredes, and then you get a guy that's clearly your top prospect. I really do think, and the Cubs, I'd imagine, you think about it, the Cubs could have given so many different packages that would have, if you use the trade machine, right, and try to match the value, they could have given two prospects that match Cam Smith's value, or it could have given a higher end prospect that maybe a lot of other front offices see to be right at the same level as Cam Smith. I really do believe that the Astros said the only way we're trading Kyle Tucker is if we're getting Cam Smith along with Wisniewski and Paredes as well. And when that finally became possible, that's where the Astros said, you know what, we're going to go through without Kyle Tucker because it's very clear here they got two pieces. I'm sure they didn't really expect initially that Cam Smith was going to be potentially breaking camp, but I bet you that when they were acquiring Cam Smith, they figured he could be helping them in the back end of the season.
Oh, yeah. They knew he could be an all-star by 2026,
Yeah.
2027.
And maybe even helping them at the end of this coming season. Now they're seeing that he could be a guy that's helping them right away. I mean, this trade, again, the best case scenario is you re-sign one of the best players in Major League Baseball in Kyle
Sure.
Tucker. But given the circumstances, they have two guys that are going to help them this year. And if Cam Smith doesn't break camp, he's going to be up there in June or July or whatever it may be. Because remember, it's not just a spring training sample. We have a 34-game minor league sample, roughly, I believe, where he had a near 1,000 OPS between low A, then quickly high A, then quickly double A, where
I
he
think
was
it was straight up 1,000. I think it was in 1,000 OPS.
like, that's outrageous. Yeah, if you include some of the complex, yeah, it's right there at
I
1,000.
I see in 32 games in Cam Smith in the regular season, 313 with a 10.05 OPS.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then he had 3 postseason games in double A where in those games he hit a home run as well. So, he's been doing it. It was 8 home runs in 35 games if you include those postseason games. So he's just been doing it. The defenses look great at third, but I also just think he's athletic enough to go play a fine right. He's got a rocket for an arm. Maybe they put him at first if Walker's hurt, whatever it may be. This is definitely a guy that can help them. And again, I am floored that he was not a top 10 draft pick. When we talked about it on the call up a ton when the draft was coming around, like this was one of my favorite prospects in the draft, and he's exceeded even my wildest expectations. But I am floored that the amount of teams that passed on Cam Smith did, and we talked about it, not to pile on the Giants, but like you brought this up because I was saying like I can't believe how many teams passed on Cam Smith. He was just so obviously one of the best bats in the draft, and the Giants. They took James Tibbs. James Tibbs is probably going to be a very good player. But I just can't imagine scouting James
just imagine
Tibbs.
going to Tallahassee and thinking the other guy's better.
Yeah, I mean, like, oh, that's who Tibbs again, great player. I think he's gonna have a great career. But watching those two guys and being like, yeah, give me Tibbs, crazy. But I think Cam Smith might be in that next kind of wave of that next face of the franchise type of player. I really think he's that talented, and uh, he's going to be very high up on our top 100 list, which is out as you're listening to this. And I mean, it's just an unreal get for the Astros, and I get it from the Cubs' perspective, but like we said, when you're trading someone of Cam Smith's caliber,
Yeah.
you better be doing more. You better have a chance to win the World Series, and the Cubs still have not made the moves that justify that, in my opinion.
Yeah, 20 minutes in. Happy happy top 100 day. I forgot to say happy top 100 day off the
Yeah.
top, but just baseball's 2025 top 100 prospects list is live. Aram works his ass off every single year on that, and this is your opportunity to kind of take a peek at the shots he's calling, but also just where he feels like the top 100 prospects in baseball stack up. And I wouldn't have given you pushback at all if I saw the list and it's like, wow, you've got Cam Smith high. I think I just would have nodded and said, like, okay, I believe you. After seeing him in person, like after just being, I don't know, 20 feet away from him and just looking at the build, I wholeheartedly believe you that this guy has all-star teams in his future.
Isn't it amazing how fast these things change too? We had him at 44 at the end of season update on the top 100, where I don't think he was a top 100 prospect at a lot of other outlets. And like at 44 now, if I kept him there right now, that would be too low.
Yeah.
Like that's how quickly he has not changed the narrative, but just upped his stock and really proven that his sophomore year breakout was sustainable and is the player that he can ultimately be. So yeah, check out the top 100, also linked in the episode description. And yeah, very excited. We'll be breaking down all of that on the call up, where we'll be going 100 to 81 and so on and so forth each episode, and talk about each of the players, which is I think probably our favorite stretch of episodes of the year. It's just an opportunity to check in on the best prospects in the game.
Yeah. Last one for you. If he does break camp and he's the right fielder, what does the best version of the outfield look like?
Ooh, I'm trying to think about that because I'm still banking, not banking, but I'm cautiously optimistic for a Chaz McCormick or breakout bounce back
Return.
because
So I'm thinking Chaz in center.
how does he grade out in center? Is he grade out all right out there?
I have no idea. Let me pull up Baseball Savant.
But I mean, right now you've got Jake Myers penciled in there. You've still got McCormick and Wright, Altuve. It's interesting. I would I would say it's probably still Myers in center until McCormick proves that he's going to swing it better again because Myers is so freaking good defensively. And you have the reason why I would go Myers in center is you have two experiments if Cam Smith breaks
Right,
camp.
you got Cam
You
and
have
right now.
Altuve in left and Cam in right. Otherwise, I agree with you. If you had Tucker in a corner and somebody else in the other corner, I'd agree. I'd go more offense. I think you go Myers up the middle. McCormick as kind of the fourth outfielder. Maybe a day where you want to be more offensively driven, then you could put him in center spot, start him. But I do think it's Altuve left, Myers in center, and Cam Smith in right. And I honestly think Cam Smith can catch on in right field pretty quickly. He's just a great athlete with a great arm.
So Chaz McCormick had a poor 97 innings in center in 2024, but in 2023 he was 4 defensive run saves and 3 outs above average in center field.
I think if Myers is struggling, you start to give him looks there
You
too.
give
But I would
Chaz in
go
center.
for the defensive wizard above all because you're clearly prioritizing offense in the corners.
Right, yeah. So you got Cam and right, Altuve and left, Jordan DHing. DeZenzo went yard today. I think DeZenzo can play first until Walker is ready. So you
Yeah.
got Paredes at third. You've got Yiner catching, Pena at short. And then it's either Dubon or Brendan Rodgers, maybe a platoon, like a
Mhm.
Dubon and Rodgers at second base. And Dubon can also play center field if you
Yeah,
want that
that's the
too.
thing too.
So
That's
it's
the
like
thing too.
Dubon and Brendan Rodgers at second base, and then you get DeZenzo at first until
Well,
Walker's healthy.
and Cam Smith's just effectively leapfrogged DeZenzo, who's a great prospect, a borderline top 100 prospect. But DeZenzo doesn't really have the ability, I think, to play the outfield. They tried it. I watched him miss a ball in right actually the other day in spring training. He can
He's a
hit.
big boy. I didn't realize how big he
Yeah,
was.
I think he's a great plug in at first base and at third base. If if somebody goes down, you hope not. But yeah, I mean, Cam Smith has just effectively leapfrogged DeZenzo, which
Yeah.
is not even an indictment on DeZenzo at all. He had a great year last year when he got back healthy and at the AAA level.
We're going to go rapid fire through some injuries before a preview of the National League West. Before that, our first break. All right. Time for a lot of bad news. Where do you want I would say where do you want to start, but I just have them kind of bulleted out,
Yeah,
so
just
I'm just
fly
going to take
through
us
them.
through. Yeah, just rip off the Band-Aid. Grayson Rodriguez will start the season on the injured list with elbow inflammation, and he got a cortisone shot, according to the Baltimore Banner. That sucks. I know that
Cortisone shot. I thought they stopped doing those.
I read cortisone shot.
Wow.
Let me pull this up and make
No, I
sure that I
believe
have
you.
this
It's just
correct.
I thought those were like not useful anymore.
Yeah, he received a cortisone shot, according to the Baltimore Banner's Andy
Interesting.
Koska, or Brandon Hyde told him. So he got a cortisone shot, elbow inflammation. I saw your quote card at the end of the week, and I saw that you were okay
Sorry.
with the O's rotation. Um, this really thins out a really thin rotation for
Yeah.
Baltimore, and I feel so bad for that fan base because we talked about it. Like they spent money. Did they spend it in the best way? No. And then you have G-Rod go down, so you're looking at Eflin and then Shugano,
Pagano.
Charlie Morton,
Yeah, that's the thing, that the path to that rotation being decent was largely predicated on
Grayson
Grayson
being awesome.
Rodriguez and
Yeah.
Zach Eflin combining for mid threes at least.
Yeah.
And I mean, now you don't even have an available Grayson Rodriguez, which I really do feel like that's been what's held him back from ultimately being the Grayson Rodriguez that we know he could be. That arm just seems to flare up the last year or so. Just every time he starts to get into a rhythm, it seems like that elbow seems to just creep back up on him.
I just feel so bad for Grayson, and I feel bad for O's fans, and I'm hoping that this is just minor and it's a rest and recovery thing.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it seems major for Garrett Cole, and I haven't
Yep.
seen the definitive Tommy John yet, but Garrett Cole is receiving second and third opinions on his elbow. Cashman told Brian Hoke, quote, "I'm prepared for the worst, but we'll see how it plays out." We acknowledged last year that he tried to R&R his way through elbow issues last year, much like Tristan McKenzie, and Kyle Bradish for a minute too, and John Means for a minute too. Like we see a lot of guys, and Andrew Painter too. Like every time I stop and think about it, more guys come to mind where it almost feels like you're delaying the inevitable. And I
Yep.
understand not wanting to get cut right away because that sucks. It's a major
Especially at
surgery.
35
Yeah, but
or
dude,
34.
I mean Garrett Cole, man, like he tried the rest and recovery thing last year with clear like elbow issues that were
We did the
probably
second and
UCL
third
related.
opinion thing again too last year. Like it was the same thing. So there clearly was some serious damage.
Yeah, and he pitched through it back half of the year, and he was nails in the postseason, and he was Cole, but the workload escalating probably past a point of comfort coming back into this year. You start the ramp up. Guess what? Familiar issues are going to rear their head very
Yeah.
quickly, and it sucks for Yankee fans that they have to deal with this, but I mean it seems like he is tumbling towards Tommy John right now.
Unfortunately, yeah. It does seem like that. And being able to avoid it and come back the way he did last year and shake off the rust and then have the second half that he had and help them get to the World Series is huge. But I was thinking about it even was at the game where I remember I was like, holy shit, Cole's still in? Because after that disastrous fifth inning, I mean, he threw 108 pitches. And
Hmm.
I know it's Garrett Cole. Like, that's something that he's been used to doing. But that was 108 pitches after throwing 88 5 days before that, 4 days rest right before that, 89 right before that, 87 right before that, 80 before that, and 101 before that. And again, I know it's not a crazy workload. We're talking about a guy that missed the front part of the season with elbow issues, then was throwing a pretty significant amount once he returned. Like it was full bore. And then postseason, it's full bore again. And then he finishes with, and it was adrenaline up too, right? It was the World Series. And his highest average fastball velocity of the entire season was in an outing where he threw the most pitches of the entire season.
Hmm.
And it was the last outing of the season. So you imagine, and I wouldn't change anything. I get it. It's the World freaking Series.
Yeah.
But 97.3 average fastball velocity, 108 pitches. Like you have to wonder just if that was kind of pushing the elbow to the brink a little bit, and
Sure.
hopefully he can avoid it. But has he been cut before? Has he had Tommy John?
I don't think so. I think this would be his first
That's
because I
pretty
know,
crazy that he's made it this throwing as hard as he has for this long. Like he's a guy that if he does get the Tommy John, it sucks that he'll be out for a while, but he might come back and then pitch another 10 years. Like
I
that's the
know,
thing.
I
And that's
know.
the frustrating part. It's like, yeah, you want to avoid it, But then what? You're going to inevitably have to get it at what, 37, 38, 39. Then are you going to recover the same way
Right.
then?
What wasn't the big thing when Sandy got cut? Wasn't the big thing like Sandy and Cole were on these insane stretches of workload and velo? Like they hit a couple of checkpoints when it came to fastball velocity and workload, and they were kind of the two men standing there that hadn't been cut.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
And actually, they were the two, like, when everyone was crossing out one at a time on like the fan graphs list of,
exactly. And it was
yeah,
Sandy and
fastball
Cole that
velocity
were,
and workload. Yeah.
and Sandy and Cole were the two we looked at and were like, they're both Hercules. They're going to be fine.
Well, and it was, but it's also like, okay, if they get that surgery that has the, an incredibly high rate of success and recovery, and we're seeing it with Sandy in real time right now, knock on wood. Like Cole, I do think if he has to undergo that, it sucks because it's a detour. But as you said, like you don't want to delay it to a point where then if he has to end up getting it midway through the season, now you're missing 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's much smarter people deciding it, but there's got to probably be some decisiveness here. And I do think this situation is a little bit different. You can kind of feel it out of Yankees camp, I feel like.
Yeah. Giancarlo Stanton, by the way, a third PRP injection in both elbows. It's a tendon issue. I know his media availability with Brian Hoke as well. I read his article on MLB.com. He cited a bat adjustment that created a tendon issue in his elbows, and he's on his third PRP injection. It's I keep using the word sucks, but it's
That one
brutal.
makes me very sad.
It makes me really sad. And I read it. I didn't hear him say it, but I could just kind of read the defeat that he acknowledged. If he does have surgery, it's a season ender. I empathize with that guy so much, or it's
And I know he
sympathize,
got
not
paid.
empathize, sympathize.
I know he got paid, and they're, oh, well, he got paid. He should be available, blah, blah, blah. That guy wants to be as available as much as anyone. And you could feel it in his comments without a doubt. It kills him that he's not able to be more available. And yeah, by all indications, he does everything he possibly can to be available. And I do think he emptied the tank in the postseason too. He was banged
Mhm.
up all year. I'm sure he wasn't feeling great. These elbows couldn't have come out of total nowhere.
No,
He was letting it rip in the postseason because that's what you do. And the Yankees, I don't think are in the World Series without him either. So that's the tough part is, two of your key pieces that help you get to the World Series are also guys in their mid 30s that, had some injuries in the season and emptied the tank. So that one kills me because, of course, watching him come up with the Marlins and become the player that's knocking on the door of Hall of Fame eligibility in terms of if you hit 500 home runs, you're just about in there. It would be devastating if just these injuries hold him back from being able to eclipse a plateau that he would have easily been able to eclipse had it not been for injuries. He's at 429 home runs right now, by the way.
yeah, man, I really want him to get to 500, and I hope he does it. And only time will tell, and we'll see how he approaches the elbow issue. Younger guy pivoting to Francisco Alvarez of the New York Mets, likely out 2 months after undergoing surgery to remove a fractured left hamate. He was taking a swing during live batting practice. The appendix of baseball strikes again.
Yep. Guys that generate that level of force, it's kind of inevitable with hitters too, to a degree. Like the very, very impactful hitters that create ridiculous EVs, that hamate eventually goes, unfortunately. It sucks. It does take some time to get back from, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, he'll be just fine. And we'll be back in time for the Mets to do what they need to do, but it is a little bit of a detour.
Back to the pitchers. George Kirby of the Mariners shut down from throwing due to shoulder inflammation. He's likely to open the season on the injured list.
Velo
I
was there. Like that was the good thing with it being a shoulder.
Yeah,
It seems like this was more precautionary.
sure. I wonder how they pivot. Is it Hancock or is it Logan Evans? I know Lyle Goldstein has been pretty vocal about how it should be Logan Evans, and I love seeing that.
So at first I was a little worried because the first two outings from Logan Evans were not good of the spring, but it was just the first two. Great bounce back against the Dodgers where he went 3 innings, a 1-run ball. It was just a solo shot that he allowed to Conforto. And the Marine layer guys, Lyle and TJ, I was asking them about that after it was a rough one from Evans. And they said they spoke to Evans, who said, oh, I'm not worried about the results. I was just going out there just trying to feel it and just be around the zone and work on some stuff. So no big deal. I think we talked about it. It's starting to feel more real now. It's season wise. He went 3 innings last time out instead of the 1 inning the last two times. Where I think it's okay. Now I care about results, and he got good results. So I'll buy that. And As much as I want to see Emerson Hancock succeed, I do think Logan Evans should be the guy that plugs in potentially too.
And we'll see, how long that lasts. And, Kirby, it would be a 15-day stay on the injured list, and we'll see if it lasts longer than 15 days, maybe extended to a month. That's okay. You want to see this guy back for as long as humanly possible. One other pitcher, speaking of the Dodger depth thing is starting to happen. Michael Grove will miss the season after undergoing an undisclosed surgery on his throwing shoulder. I have no idea whether it was a capsule tear or something like that, but it was shoulder surgery from Michael Grove. He's going to miss the year. Gavin Stone is going to miss the year. Robleski looks good, but we talk about how they're 8-9 deep. Grove was a Swiss Army knife that they needed at points last year. His innings were really valuable to the overall betterment of the 2024 LA Dodgers, and not having him for 25 when you let several people walk starts to get scary. And we talked about that rotation. It's like, oh, they're gonna tap into the reserves quick.
Yeah.
One of the reserves is gone.
Yeah, well, and I thought maybe Tony Gonsolin would be that guy, but now all of a sudden Gonsolin may end up plugging into the rotation. You have no Gavin Stone, you have no River Ryan. I think it's going to be huge to see when Emmett Sheehan can come back too, because that guy's special, and they may want to ease him in. The fastball is so good that if he's in some sort of swingman role, then he could get those innings back. Dustin May being healthy, and I'm rooting so hard for that guy. Esophagus tear after all the arm issues he's had. So they do have irons in the fire.
I think it was like an improperly deboned salmon that he was eating.
Yeah, that's my worst nightmare as a seafood
Same.
lover. My legit biggest nightmare. They have other options right now, which is good, but the other options are all guys that have been really hurt. Gonsolin, May, even Sasaki. It's Sheehan coming off of injury. Kershaw. Like, it's all guys that have been very hurt. So it could get thin quick, and that's why you play the season. You're not rooting for that, obviously, right. But that's why you play the games, and anything can happen, as much as people want to anoint the Dodgers repeat champions.
Yep. And getting back to the star power, Jurickson Profar has a bone bruise on his left wrist, expected to be ready for opening day. I was watching that live. I saw him dive, and he rolled up on his wrist, diving for a liner in. And the initial thought is, damn it, it's broken.
Yeah.
But thank goodness it's just a bone bruise, and he should be fine.
Yeah, that's just dodged a bullet there. We'll see. This means more Jared Kelenic at bats, I guess, and
sure,
more Brian De La Cruz at bats. The Braves will survive for the time being.
Not injury related, but a funny thing I saw. Juan Soto said on a podcast that multiple teams offered more money than the Mets.
You think they're just telling him to do that?
I just saw that and I laughed. I was like, that's not true.
No.
That's not true. I know that.
That's definitely not.
I don't know that. Obviously, I don't know that credibly, but I could bet you $765 million that somebody did not offer him more than $765 million.
With the escalators that his deal even has, there's no way. There's no way. I understand that he wants to probably combat the narrative of, I didn't just take the biggest amount of money.
No, I went to the team.
We all would do the same thing. It's good. It's fine. This is almost worse to me, even if it's somehow true.
Right.
No one does that anyways. No one says, "Oh, other teams offered more money." It usually comes out from a reporter or whatever when the agent wants to leak that.
Sure.
But usually agents don't even want to leak that. So, no, I didn't see that. Now I'm kind of bothered by that. Like, come on, dude, just go play for the Mets and go make your $1 billion. You don't need to worry about optics.
By the way, I watched Juan Soto get a standing ovation and helmet tip the crowd in Jupiter after he went 3 for 3 with a double and 2 singles. Hey, it was a really good 3 for 3 day, but it was half of a spring training game, and he curtain called after half of a spring training game. I was like, oh man, okay.
I will say though, at least Mets fans, not the Yankees fans didn't, but it is just nice to see that fans are appreciating that they've got a generational talent on their team as well. Yankees fans did too, but when a team, I just want to make sure that Mets fans don't become the spoiled rich kids now that they've got Uncle Steve. So it's nice to see them be appreciative.
Getcha. Before we get to the National League East season preview, we've got a really exciting venture coming, and it's live today.
Yes.
Discord is active. Just Baseball's on Discord. It feels like it's been a long time coming, but this is a great opportunity for us to engage with the audience in a new, unique way that we're all really fired up about.
And to provide additional bonus content. Obviously, we pride ourselves on making all of our content free and available to all, and that will always be the case. That doesn't change. But in doing so, there's a reason why there's a lot of outlets that have stuff behind a paywall. It's really hard to monetize websites, and there's a lot of wrinkles into it. With us, we are really excited about everything we've built and so grateful to the audience that's helped us make this a thing. But we had so many questions of like, hey, are you guys ever thinking about like launching a Discord? Have you thought about having some other wrinkles where we can connect and have more unique content? And the only way that we could really figure out how to make it all work was finally doing it the way that we're doing it now, which is having all our entire staff. I mean, this is everybody involved, from us to the writers to social media folks. And it's really going to be peeling back the curtain and being involved with the entire Just Baseball team. And it's going to be all of our verticals there too. Like, we're really excited about, of course, Peter's picks, and you're going to be able to have access to that and get those picks early before the games if you want to tail that and be involved on the betting side, but also from a prospect angle as well. Every time we put out a top 100 list, which as we put out this top 100, I'm going to be answering questions all day tomorrow in there about the top 100. We're going to be doing bonus episodes. We're trying to figure out the best way to do like bonus mailbags and bonus Q&As. That's something that the three of us will be doing all the time as well, and want to provide that value there. A ton of giveaways and discounts on merch. Like, we want to make this the most valuable thing possible while also making, helping build what is an incredible just baseball community. So we're very excited about that. But the quick like TLDR is you're going to be able to have the betting side if you're into that, but also early access on prospect information, just constant chatter and conversation about what's going on in the prospect world, early looks at the lists, being able to ask questions immediately on that front. We have the same thing with our college and draft guys, our entire staff of writers that you'll be able to talk to them after they put stuff out, fantasy baseball cards as well. We're even gonna have an MLB The Show channel in there, so you can talk about the game, potentially match up with people playing there. And like, our audience, this 5 stadiums in 5 days tour was a big catalyst, I think, in this as well. Is we met so many people that are just like us that were like, man, I want to stay in touch with you guys. I want to be able to connect with you guys more consistently. And we felt like this was the perfect way to do that. And a lot of people had asked us, what's a way that I can continue to support Just Baseball? This is a great way to do that as well, because this helps us support our writers and support the people that have worked way too hard for what they get paid. And we want to continue to get more going their way and build, our staff to what we've already been proud of, but continue to build it.
And we fell ass backwards into a group of amazing human beings that work for Just Baseball, that grind so hard, and we cannot believe how lucky we are to interact with these people every day. And my personal favorite thing about this new venture, like this new Discord, is you effectively get an open forum with the Just Baseball staff. Like, it is that constant communication. Like, I'm going to be checking in there. If somebody tags me in something, I'm going to respond to that. I'm not going to respond to people on X, unfortunately. But I know you've been trying to do it a little bit, but like Discord, those are people that just love Just Baseball to the core. So I'm absolutely going to be in there chatting with people like that. You're going to be in there chatting with people like that. Our writing staff, you mentioned, there's an article that drops in there. You have a follow-up, or you have a point that you want to kind of create a little debate about. People are there to have that conversation. This is going to be a group of baseball dorks for baseball dorks. Sorry if I offended you calling you a dork.
No, it's coming from dorks. That's the whole point. Like, again, we met people at the stadium tour, and that was exactly what I'm like, I want to communicate with you all more consistently and have.
You're saying you met him at the stadium tour. And it's like, oh, you're a dork.
Yeah,
You're
I'm like,
calling everybody dorks. Good.
Yeah, essentially. And it's I want to build a community. So we're really excited about that. And there's going to be a lot of fun wrinkles within that, where if we're doing another stadium tour, or we're doing a specific giveaway, where we're going to be doing box breaks in there as well that are exclusive to the subscribers. So like, that'll be really fun. And of course, I'll be ripping those, and it'll be a blast there. We're getting discount spots and breaks if you're into the card side of things, but just allows us to notify you guys about what we've got going on as well. Like, hey, we're going to have an extra episode this week, or hey, we've got freaking, who knows, maybe Paul Skeens, maybe he comes on at some point during the season. You have the heads up a little bit in advance of whatever big guests we're going to have, things like that. So it keeps you intertwined with what we got going on, but also we're going to use it as an opportunity to get feedback from you all as well, where it's things that you want from us content wise, things that you want to see us do potentially on the show or whatever. We think it's the best way to know what you guys want as well. And the YouTube comments have been helpful for that for a little bit, but this is a really easy way to communicate and, again, have a specific community of the people that really appreciate and love what we're doing, and we appreciate you. So it's a great way to connect. So I'm very excited about that. If you have any other questions about it, feel free to DM and I'm happy to talk about it. Just I think about all the times we get questions of like, should I do this or that in Dynasty? Like for those
Yeah,
folks,
sure.
this is where I'm answering them now. So like I can't keep up with the X DMs where it's like, should I do? I try to answer them. It's too hard.
Yeah.
So that's another area, like literally fantasy advice, whatever it may be. That's what we want it to be. And on top of that, though, I do think a big part of the value is going to be those bonus Q&As where if you haven't got your questions answered on the mailbags we do monthly, we're going to be doing those all the time in there. So you will get your questions answered.
Uh, First order of business is that new MLB The Show channel that's going to be in there. Also, great idea, Brandon
Great
Anderson
idea
with an
by Brandon.
MLB, yeah, MLB The Show channel. First order of business, give me the funniest players that are rated higher than Sandy Alcantara in MLB The Show. Rated higher than 2022 unanimous Cy Young Award winner Sandy, who's a
Dude,
78 overall. I love Osvaldo Beto. I love watching him in Indianapolis, but Beto being an 80 and Sandy being a 78 blew my mind.
Griff caught so many strays for that because
What?
Griffin Conine being a 76
It was a
overall.
sick rating at
Yeah, no,
76,
it's great,
though.
but he caught so many strays because they're like, why the hell is Griffin Conine within two of Sandy Alcantara? I'm like, that's not the problem. The problem is how low Sandy is.
The
Like,
problem is the people on top.
but he was laughing. He texted. He's the one that pointed that out to me. He's like, dude, I'm catching a lot of strays for my rating.
That's funny.
That part was great. We'll have to ask him about that next time he's on the show. And that's another wrinkle that I'm hoping to get firing up to in there is like, the way Tarek Skubal did, like an Ask Me Anything
Yeah.
on Reddit, doing that with players, in the Discord to do a little Ask Me Anything. And again, just giving you guys more access, not only to us, but potentially to players and things like that too. So, and we're all feedback too. So if there's other things you want to see in there, we're going to try to continue to make it the best possible experience for you and make it worth it. We'd love to have you in there and appreciate all the support. If not, again, content's totally unchanged, and we still love you and appreciate your support. But for those that want a little bit more, we're excited to have you.
Cool. All right, let's do the National League West season preview, and we're going to start with the reigning World Series champion LA Dodgers. Spoiler alert, they're going to finish first in this division. Spoiler alert, they're the favorite to win the World Series. Understandably so. You're shaking your head no?
D-backs taking the division. No, not
Whoa.
actually. That won't be my actual prediction, but I just said you got to play 162, dude.
Mm-hmm. That's
I
why
just
they
said it.
play the game.
I'm still saying it. You got to play 160. They're probably going to win the division.
Um, the lineup as it stands right now, Will Smith and Austin Barnes are the catching tandem. If Dalton Rushing wants to be involved in that, okay, go ahead, man. We'll see where he checks in. Maybe it's a corner outfield. Maybe it's it's not the DH because Otani's going to hit every day. Otani is the DH. Freddie Freeman at first. At second base, it's probably Hai-Sung Kim, maybe Chris Taylor, maybe Miguel Rojas. It's Mookie Betts at short, Max Muncy at third. The outfield left to right is going to be Michael Conforto, Tommy Edman, and Teoscar Hernandez. The bench, Barnes, Miggy Rowe, Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez right now. Just some notes on guys that are in the minor leagues that are absolutely big league ready. Dalton Rushing is going to be in the minor leagues to start the year. Alex Freeland is going to be in the minor leagues to start the year. Andy Pages and James Outman are going to be in the minor leagues to start the year.
That's so I want just one last top 100 tease. They've got two top 10 prospects. And my biggest pet peeve in the world is like, oh, you rank them higher because they're Dodgers. No, I don't care. I don't care that they're Dodgers. I'm looking at the prospects in a vacuum. But they've got two guys in the top 10, and they've got another two in the top 50 or close to it. I mean, I actually got feedback from some people in the industry that said I was too low on a couple of the Dodgers prospects. And those are rival teams. So like I had to bump them up a little bit, Freeland being one of them. So they have a ridiculous farm system as well where they're going to be able to do things. But just looking at the lineup, you mentioned like what second base can be. That's probably their biggest like deficiency when you're looking at proven talent. And I really do like the idea of a Hai-Sung Kim, Miguel Rojas platoon. Rojas has always hit lefties pretty well. He's going to be a superb defender there. Kim has the ability to be a good defender. He gives you speed, a lot of speed in that ninth spot too, potentially as well. Like your lighter hitters, if you're assuming Conforto takes a step forward in LA, are speedsters in Edman and Kim that I think can give you a lot of just a dynamic aspect, I guess, to the bottom of the lineup to set the table back again for the ridiculous row of Hall of Famers at the trio of Hall of Famers at the top.
It's a near flawless offense. And I'm just thinking about the plug and play options you have in the infield. I mean, say the Miggy Rowe High Kim tandem isn't going great. Or say, you want to put Mookie at second base because short isn't going great. Or you want to put Mookie in the corner outfield because short isn't going great. Alex Freeland, you mentioned, is a guy that was already top 100, and you might have been too low on him, and he's in the top 50, it sounds like. And, have a
Dalton Rushing's the top catching prospect in baseball if Will Smith goes down.
I mean, come on. Like, there is a gluttony of riches here. And I understand why it's nauseating for a lot of fan bases, but the Dodgers put themselves in position to do this. And they obviously they will outbid for a Conforto and a Teoscar Hernandez, and they paid Shohei $700 million dollars, and they paid Freddie. But I mean, dude, like at the end of the day, they've established this opportunity and they're going to keep the machine churning. This is Andrew Friedman at his core. This is what he did in Tampa, and he's just doing it with way more resources in LA.
It might sound crazy, but I really think that I can't really see a way where the offense struggles or like disappoints because of the prospects that are all big league ready. Dalton Rushing, as we mentioned, Freeland, like you could plug those guys in really quickly and they're going to make an impact. So I look at the offensive side with the bench that they have too, just the quality of players there. Even Kike Hernandez is a better bench option than most teams are going to have. If Chris Taylor is any better, he's still a solid bench option. And then of course Rojas was really solid last year when he was on the mound in the lineup and healthy and not playing every day. You end up playing more than they expected. Should potentially be able to stay healthy longer. It's far fetched either way for them to have a deficit or struggle, but I think it's easier to see things potentially going wrong on the mound than lineup wise. I just think they're just too sound offensively.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Now we go to the mound here. It looks like it's going to be Yamamoto, Snell, Glasnow, Sasaki, and Gonsolin on the injured list. Kershaw working his way back, Kyle Hurt working his way back, River Ryan, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone. We mentioned Michael Grove is out for the year as well. The rotation as a whole, like obviously that looks really good. And you have Dustin May, you have Robleski as backup options. Kasparius can be a long man out of the pen. He can spot start if you need. And oh, by the way, I haven't even mentioned Bobby Miller, Landon Knack, and Nick Frasso, who's back from injury. There's still plenty of depth here. I'm just saying, let's check in 3 months. And I'm not forecasting a bunch of injuries, but depth dissipates quickly.
I'm glad you mentioned Frasso. I'm really happy to see him healthy. He's had so many arm issues through the years and back. He only threw one inning twice, but sat 94. He averaged 94.2 on 14 pitches and averaged 94.2 on 23 pitches. So that's a guy that absolutely can be another asset for them, whether it be in that Michael Grove swingman, long relief role, or a guy that they eventually spot start. I think they're going to transition him to a reliever for health reasons and because I think the stuff plays better there, but that's just another option there. It's still a really good situation, and reports are positive on Gonsolin looking like he's feeling good and everything again. But I think where you see things potentially getting thin quick, Glasnow is still a guy that was dealing with injuries at the end of the year. Seems to be the story every single year. Sasaki has been hurt pretty much every single year of his professional career and hasn't thrown more than 120 innings. I mean, Glasnow and Sasaki are two guys that you are thrilled if they're throwing more than 120 innings this coming season. So that's already a little bit of a question mark there. And then you mentioned all the guys that you're waiting for to come back and seeing what they look like if they even are able to come back in time. So it's a phenomenal rotation. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying if there's one area where things could go relatively speaking haywire, it's the pitching, I would say.
Yeah, and dude, a kind of a surprise. I know Matt Sauer can be a long man out of the pen, but Sauer has been a starter. He's on the travel roster to Tokyo. Like, I'm just thinking things going awry. We're at the point where Sauer, who struggled a little bit in the spring, I understand the stuff is great, and he had a minor league start where he punched out like 17 or something in Double-A as a Yankee farmhand. But, Sauer, also, by the way, cool story. This is from Sonia Chen, who covers the Dodgers for MLB.com. His mom, I think, is Japanese descent, and she's going to see him.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
he's planning
sick.
on getting
I
his
didn't know
mom,
that.
Tammy, to Tokyo as part of the trip. Tammy was born in Okinawa and hasn't been back since she was young.
That's so
So,
cool.
yeah,
Awesome.
Matt Sauer bringing his mom, Tammy, out there. That was actually Fabian Ardaya who tweeted that. But, no, that was really cool. But, like, even a Sauer entering the fold kind of shows that they're relying on length and
Well,
depth.
And it's still a series. It would be a very large series of unfortunate events because, as you mentioned, you still have Landon Knack, who was
Sure.
really solid last year. You still have Bobby Miller, who, by the way, I am rooting so hard for Bobby Miller.
Hmm.
After taking that ball off the head, did you see that he was throwing for the first time again in live ABs? And I think the first or one of the first few batters he faces, rocket right back at him. He ducked out of the way, and they said they shut it down.
No,
It's
I
like,
didn't see that. That's
yeah.
terrible.
So like, I mean, I'm just hoping Bobby can just have some peace on the mound, and
Yeah.
it's just bad luck there. But you're hoping Bobby bounces back. It's just another great iron in the fire, very talented arm, and Knack is a high floor back into the rotation guy. So still, it would take a ridiculous series of unfortunate events,
Yeah.
but I still think it's more likely that the pitching faces issues than the hitting. And
Yeah.
I don't know what people think of that, but that's just it really seems far fetched for me to see the offense not work out with the prospects they have ready to go to.
I'm 100% with you. And I'm just looking at the pen too. Gratterall, shoulder surgery. Grove, shoulder surgery. Enriquez on the shelf. Michael Kopech on the shelf, forearm thing. Evan Phillips, PRP, on the shelf. But then they still have Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, Trinan, Vesia, Bonda. Ben Kasperius looks good, man, and he looked good last year as well. They are so loaded. It's the rotation. Like I will actually ID the rotation instead of the pitching staff that runs into issues. It would be the starting rotation because I don't know where the bullpen runs into issues.
Yeah. And I want to give a shout to a guy that's going to come out of nowhere, be disgusting
Jack
out of the
Dreyer,
pen.
do
Yep.
it.
There you
Yes.
go. Jack Dreyer. Jack Dreyer is going to be a force,
Yeah.
an absolute force. And it's not just because he struck out 9 of the 18 batters he's faced in spring training. It's a name that we talked about on the call up at the end of last year. This dude is disgusting. So Jack Dreyer is going to be doing some stuff for them in the pen too. The pen shouldn't be much of an issue.
No. So we might as well just jump to the San Diego Padres here. And this is where you run into a couple more issues, I do think. The San Diego Padres, the lineup as it is currently constructed, catching tandem Elias Diaz and Luis Campusano at this point. First base will be Jake Cronenworth. You've got Jose Iglesias at second base. That was a good
Great
pickup for
pickup.
them on a
Huge,
1 year deal.
huge pickup. They just needed a
Really,
guy that can carry his own weight and be a league average, and we know he can be better than that.
yeah.
I was shocked that they got him on a minor league deal. Pretty amazing.
And I didn't see the exact tweet, but somebody relayed this to me. Someone asked in Padres camp whether, he feels like he's deserving of making the team or not. And he said, at this point in my career, I'm not a minor league player. And I
Yeah,
wholeheartedly agree with
of
him. He
course.
was great for the Mets last year. So you've got Iglesias at second base. That'll be a great fit. Got Bogarts at short, Machado at third. That's taken care of. Tatis is in right. Merrill is in center. Arise will DH, which is kind of nice now. And then in left, you have this platoon likely of Jason Hayward and Connor Joe. And then
Yeah.
the bench would be Camposano, Joe or Hayward, Eggy Rosario, Tyler Wade. This offense looked really thin a month ago. It looks all right now.
Yeah. Given the circumstances and their financial limitations, they AJ Preller did a pretty good job of piecing it together. To get Iglesias on a minor league deal is ridiculous. I think Hayward still on a platoon situation can hold up his end of the bargain, but if not, you still have a Tirso Ornelas, who I do think can be solid for them. Connor Joe's going to hit lefties forever. That's something I'm not too worried about either. They were able to piece it together enough here where I don't think it's as ridiculous of a drop off. You are always going to be driven by the top of the order of Arias, Tatis, Merrill, and Machado, and Bogarts if he's healthy. But it was just such a dramatic drop off that we're like, whoa. If Iglesias, Hayward, Elias Diaz, Connor Joe, if those guys can all combine for league average offense, this team will be fine offensively. They'll
Yeah.
be one of the better still offensive top third in baseball, I still think. And I do still think Tirso Ornelas is a sleeper here. And I
Hmm.
really do believe that Hayward, we're hoping it works. If it doesn't, we're ready for Tirso to get up there and make an impact right away. And he's been great in spring training. He's been hitting
Yeah.
the living crap out of the ball.
Dude, he's mashing, and he's always been a big boy, but he's really tapping into it right now. Starting rotation, the front four, I have zero problems with, and I think it's objectively a top 10 front four in Major League Baseball, but we don't play that game. We play starting rotation game. Cease, King, Darvish, Pavetta. No problems whatsoever. They have an elite front two. And when you clump in 3 and 4, Darvish, like I feel bad leaving him out of elite front two, but when is Father Time going to catch up? It might never catch up. We'll see what happens. Darvish and Pivetta is in elite 3 and 4 if we're clumping like that. 5 is where you run into issues. Is it Kyle Hart?
Yes.
Is it Matt Waldron? Is it Randy Vasquez? You think it's Kyle Hart?
I think given and they're not paying him a ton, but they signed him, to a big league deal. Probably going to be Hart. I'm okay with Hart as a 5. I was concerned when it was Hart as a 4. If he's your 5 behind Pavetta, that's okay. The problem is, as you mentioned, if Father Time catches up to you, Darvish, and he has to miss some time, who's plugging in there? If it's Hart to Waldron, then I'm a little skeptical. Or Randy Vasquez or Johnny Brito.
Or
You're
Juan
hoping one of those
Nunez?
guys takes a leap,
Do you
but
think Juan
they need
Nunez
that.
could start games, or do you think he's a multi-inning reliever?
That's a good question too.
Rule 5 pick.
I mean, I think they picked him to potentially be that depth option, just another iron in the fire. I thought it would probably be as a reliever, given that it's a big leap from high A and he's had some command issues. So unless there's some magical click, I would expect that he'd be more in that multi-inning relief. And maybe they bullpen game it a little bit. Brian Hoeing's been hurt, but maybe he's an opener or a piggyback that can go 3, 4 innings. He's a guy that used to be a starter and has been solid. He's dealing with some shoulder soreness, though, so I don't know if that's a guy that you immediately want to ramp up. But the thing is in that 5 spot, they only really need a 5 and dive guy because this bullpen has the potential to be elite.
It's really strong. And you mentioned Hoeing dealing with shoulder soreness. You hope that's minor and he's back in April or May. Sean Reynolds had a stress reaction in his foot. Guest of the call up recently, Sean Reynolds
Great guy.
looked amazing out of the bullpen for San Diego. He's a 6'8" hitter convert that looked like a lights out reliever in the big leagues at the end of the
Yeah.
year, Sean Reynolds.
Yeah, he and I love that was a really fun interview because he's got such an interesting story as a converted hitter who struck out like 40 something percent of the time.
Yeah.
Also hit a ball 119 miles per hour, by the way, in Beloit. But just the perspective that he has, that's a guy that I do think is going to be a valuable reliever for them one way or another. And just another great iron in the fire. And I mean, you look at bullpens where you see the leverage guys and then everybody else, and there's a big drop off. And then there's some bullpens, of course, you still have the leverage guys, but then your middle relief guys, the next tier of guys, could be pitching leverage, high leverage, and maybe some of the weaker bullpens in Major League Baseball, or even just some of the more middling bullpens in Major League Baseball. If Yuki Matsui takes, I'll let you introduce the bullpen, but I was a couple of guys that if they take the leap that I think they can take, you could argue you have 4 or 5 high leverage arms in this bullpen or high leverage caliber arms.
I think you have 5 or 6 high leverage caliber arms in this bullpen. I'm buying. I don't even want to call it a dip because it was a 3.70 ERA and 62 and 2/3 for Yuki Matsui. But I'm buying Yuki Matsui.
It's a transition year for a guy that worked very slow in internationally, right?
Yeah,
And now had to get used to the pitch clock. He was up against it every single time. I think
yeah.
he's going to be more comfortable with the rhythm of things now this year.
I think Hoeing and Reynolds both proved to be high leverage caliber. Maybe not Reynolds yet, but I think Hoeing is absolutely there after what he did last year. So
Oh yeah.
Hoeing is 1, Matsui is 2. I'm working backwards right now. Morahone was 63 and 2/3 at a 2.8. I think he can handle leverage. Jeremiah Estrada has one of the most unique pitches in Major League Baseball. You put him on your Mount Stuffmore. Jason Adam, Robert Suarez. That's 6 names that I feel comfortable taking on an 8th inning if I'm 15 to 20 teams in Major League Baseball.
And I love their bounce back. As also Alec Jacob is looking interesting. He was
Sure.
very good in 14 and 2/3 last year, but also has looked very solid. That's a potential breakout candidate in this bullpen at 26 years old. Wandy Peralta is a bounce back candidate. Ron Marinaccio is gross. If he's healthy, that's a guy that is a bounce back candidate as well. But those are the spots where you plug and play, right? If Wandy is struggling or Ron is struggling, that's where Sean Reynolds, here you go. Let's see what you got. I really like what they've built in the bullpen here. And for that reason, I think the 5th spot in the rotation is a little bit less important, where if Kyle Hart's 5 and diving, that's fine. Toss it over to Yuki Matsui, who is capable of going multi-innings in relief. And I do think he's going to take a huge step forward this year. Or a Morahone, who is former starter, could potentially go multi-innings in relief. That's another thing I know people were talking about a ton is like, oh, Morahone should be a starter because of his pitch mix. I don't know about that, but it is a guy that if you are piecing together the 5 spot, he could be an excellent piggyback that you stretch out to 2 or 3. They have options here, pitching staff wise. And I think the bullpen is going to be a huge factor in mitigating maybe some of the concern in the back end of the rotation if somebody gets hurt. But Pivetta changed everything. I did not think they were going to be able to get a guy like him and be able to add him to the fold, even if he's a 4.2 ERA. If he can give you 150 innings and do what he did last year, you're in a pretty good spot.
If it's funny, like I think if you gave me 20 minutes to build a query of relievers with a 3 pitch arsenal and a plus ground ball rate, I could give you every single thread ever put together on a reliever that can make the move to the starting rotation.
Yeah, as a thread guy, I loved the threads that I used to put together on X. It's become a saturated market.
Insanely saturated. And there are
Yeah.
some awesome thread people, but then
Oh
I
yeah.
see random I see random accounts putting together a thread. This guy's a break or a bounce back candidate because his X average was
Yeah,
higher than his
just
actual batting average.
this guy should be a starter. Started to drive me a little crazy. There's a
Yeah.
few too many of those.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, it's a 20-minute query, and that's exactly why people think that these guys can be starters. All right, let's go to the Arizona Diamondbacks here. The Diamondbacks are in a fun position. The lineup is electric. Catching tandem, Gabby Moreno, Jose Herrera, Adrian Del Castillo. Pick your backup. I don't care. Gabby's having a breakout year. I feel pretty confident with that, to be
Yes.
honest. Pavin
Yeah.
Smith is likely going to be the DH. And then you've got Randall Grichuk there to factor in as well. But Grichuk is probably going to form a platoon with Jake McCarthy. The outfield is McCarthy, Gurriel, Grichuk. And then, of course, you've got Corbin Carroll in right and center and left, wherever you put him. First base, Josh Naylor, who they acquired from Cleveland. Second base, the best second baseman in baseball, Ketel Marte. Shortstop, the newly extended Geraldo Perdomo, and you've got Eugenio Suarez at third base. And the bench is Herrera, Greg Hessinger maybe, Randall Grichuk, and Alec Thomas. The big one for me here, how do you use Jordan Lawler? He's healthy.
And yeah, I think he's got to earn that conversation first, and that's the reality of it. I think being hurt and then not being able to string together consistent success since because he's been banged up. I think he's going to have to be in AAA, show that he's healthy, perform. But the good news is that is one of the best. We just talked about gushed about the Dodgers and oh well, they have a guy that they can plug in immediately and I think be a one of the best third string options or backup options that you have. That's a similar situation here in Arizona where, I mean, Ketel Marte has struggled with injury. It would be devastating. You can't replace that production. But if Marte goes down or Perdomo goes down, you have a fantastic defender and a dynamic athlete and a guy that has all-star potential that you can now plug in immediately there. So giving them a lot of quality depth there is huge. But I think that's a guy that you put in AAA unless he's needed for a little bit. And then if he's performing really, really well in the PCL, which is expected, you bring him up maybe in the second half of the season, and that's where he's in this alternate role. He's still just 22. It's a weird situation. But I think them extending Perdomo did somewhat show that, hey, we're not just going to bank on Lawler coming up here and succeeding immediately. Sometimes you got to take the bird in hand, and Perdomo's a really good player. I think the future would be him at third base. And that's the other thing, too. If Gino Suarez goes down, Lawler would play third, and he could be a good third baseman there. I think that's probably what makes the most sense. Gino's a free agent, I think, after this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
I think Lawler could ultimately be their third baseman. But the point is, he's kind of your fill-in. He's the backup at like 3 spots, essentially, which is a great thing to have.
Yeah, and it's good for him because he's just going to hop up at the best opportunity, and that'll be that. I'm looking at the multi-year payroll summary, and Gino Suarez is off the books after
Yeah.
this year, and obviously Naylor is off the books as well. So, we'll see how they want to attack the corner infield of that. I like that you bring up taking the bird in hand because the example that I always want to point to is what happened in Atlanta. And I know that Orlando Arcia struggled offensively last year, but imagine if they kicked Arcia to the curb and they rolled with Vaughn Grissom.
Yeah.
Vaughn Grissom turned into Chris Sale, and it's not just the trade thing. Like, Grissom was probably not big league ready. He rode a hot stretch in 22. In 23, they didn't deem him right. In 24, he provided no value for Boston. He was hurt a
He's
lot, and
banged
he was
up
in
a ton.
AAA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's and people might say, "Oh, well, that's bad luck." Yeah, but also that's where when you push guys through the minor leagues really quickly. Now, I'm not saying that's why he got hurt, but he's never really even been conditioned to play 120, 130, 140 games. So
Yeah.
that may have impacted him a little bit as well. It's just an unproven commodity at that point. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. Bringing back Randall Grichuk, as much as it doesn't
Huge.
sound like anything crazy, him being able to pick up the short side of the platoon for either Pavins, but probably both. They'll be whoever's swinging it better left on left will probably ride. They'll ride that hot hand. But when you can plug in a Randall Grichuk for either Pavin Smith or Jake McCarthy, I mean, this guy had a 908. He slashed 317, 384, 524 against left-handed pitching last year in 185 plate appearances. So you're taking the short side of the platoon and adding potentially all-star production to guys that I think Pavin Smith could be really good in the bulk of the platoon. And Jake McCarthy, we've seen be a very valuable player as well and had a nice bounce back last year. So I think McCarthy might regress a little bit, and that's where it makes the most sense, where you've got a guy that can grab the short side of the platoon, maybe offset some of the regression.
Yeah. Rotation for the D-backs. Corbin Burns and Zach Gallen leading it as the most fun 1-2 combination in Major League Baseball. I've got it's not a soft spot for Gallen. I just love watching Gallen pitch because I think he's a very complete pitcher. And then you got Burns leading him, like being the front of that. That's a 1-2 punch that is, I don't know, top three in baseball. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head.
It's up there with just about anybody. Do they ceremoniously still give Gowan the opening day start because it's his rotation, or what do they do there? You think?
I think they give Burns the ball on opening
I think
day.
it's a no brainer. You give it to Burns,
Oh,
but
I agree. It's a no-brainer, but
I was thinking about that. I'm like, I could see them just being like, oh, well, Gallon, it's Gallon's team or whatever, and he gets it.
the one that's getting me is Pittsburgh has yet to announce an opening day starter.
If it's not Paul Skeens, I'm not getting into that.
I
It would
know,
be.
but like, and Major League Baseball would not let that happen.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna say, I think it would be against the
I
law.
mean, it was Keller the last 2 years, and they could say Keller's the wily vet, and
Oh,
he's
I
the
would
all
be.
star.
Oh my gosh, you would see my head steaming because I'll be at the game.
Yeah,
You'd see my head steaming from the press box. I
you
think
and me
because
both, pal. You and me
yeah,
both.
yeah. At least you. I'm not going back the next day. I don't think. At least you'll be there. I don't know
Yeah,
if I want to go back to Miami again the next day.
true.
But no, that would be wild.
Yeah,
I mean, Merrill Kelly is the three too. Like a healthy Merrill Kelly is as good of a solid and reliable three as you can get. Problem is he has been a little bit fragile the last year and change.
that's okay. Guess what? You're six deep right now. You've got
Yeah.
Erod as the four, Fott as the five, and Ryan Nelson. They might have to burn an option to get Ryan Nelson the innings he needs.
And I do think Jordan Montgomery's become overhated at this point. I
Sure.
understand that he was atrocious last year, but you're telling me that that guy didn't figure something out this offseason to get him. I'm not saying he's back to Jamont of a 3.20 ERA or even a 3.83 like he had in 2021. But you're telling me that guy can't give you innings at like a 4.4.
Hmm.
If he's your five starter, and for him to be the five starter, that means somebody went down and maybe somebody else.
Yeah.
But he has been an innings eater. He could just consume innings for you at a 4.4. And I still think that 3.8 guy is in there. I don't think that he just magically forgot how to pitch. I do think that the circumstances affected him a little bit last year. Recalibrate. If he's anywhere within a remote distance of what he's been the previous 3 seasons, I think that's just a huge, huge bonus for this team because remember, they don't need him to be at all. Like they don't need him to be good at all. It would be if multiple pitchers got hurt, essentially,
Yeah.
where then he would be asked to plug in. I think that's a great spot to be in if you're the Diamondbacks.
And oh, by the way, you can explore whatever you want to explore with Gilbert Diaz and Christian Mena in Reno.
And Dre Jamison, who's now healthy and back. I still think his best course is as a reliever,
Yeah,
but that's still another guy that you could plug in the rotation.
sure.
And if that's your five, that's a fine five.
GG's, man. And then the bullpen, Trey Jameson, I think can handle leverage, but they're going to rely on three guys to really handle leverage. Maybe four guys to really handle leverage. And that'll be Justin Martinez and AJ Puck probably as co-closers, and Ginkel and Ryan Thompson right behind him. That's a dangerous front four in a bullpen too. I I I totally hear you on the Diamondbacks thing, like how they can totally win this division. But the Dodgers are the Dodgers. They're such a clear-cut second place for me.
Yeah, I get that. And before people say like, oh, the bullpen gap and like maybe the Padres bullpen has a chance to be a lot
Padre
better
bullpen
than
is
that
awesome, but the
Diamondbacks.
rotation objectively better and the lineup objectively better than
Let me
San Diego.
remind you what AJ Puck did over the final 44 appearances of the year, which spilled into his time with the Marlins. 44 innings, a 0.82 ERA, a 42.5% strikeout rate, and a 3.8% walk rate. And when the season was pretty much over on the 28th, I believe, the last game of the season, he gave up 3 earned runs. If you remove that one, he had a 43 game stretch where he had a 0.21 ERA. That's 1 earned run in 43 and 2/3 innings with 68 strikeouts. This guy could be a closer. He adjusted his release, he adjusted his pitch usage, and props to the D-backs for recognizing that and trading for him. And I mean, this is a guy that I absolutely think can pitch at leverage for them. I mean, or excuse me, close games. Sorry, pitching at leverage. Justin Martinez has some of the best stuff in Major League Baseball, and we've seen Kevin Ginkel be pitching in the eighth and ninth plenty of times, and we saw him do it on the big stage in that World Series run. So, with Graveman added to the fold as well, this is a bullpen that can still be really really solid.
Justin Martinez allowed 2 home runs last year. He threw, I'm just trying to ballpark this, about 1,300 pitches. Do you have the pitch total? He threw 1,177 pitches. Two were taken deep last year, Justin Martinez. He sat 100.2 with his sinker. Opponents were 8 for 82 against his splitter with a 122 slugging percentage, and opponents hit 178 with a sub 300 slug against his slider. Those two in the eighth and ninth, if Burns gives him 7, and then if Gallen gives him 7, and they can go back to back nights, Martinez in the eighth, Puck in the ninth, interchangeable, that's a 2 game stretch that I'm not missing a pitch of.
No, and to the same point, Puck allowed 2 home runs over the final 50 appearances.
Yeah.
They'll get Andrew Saalfrank back in June as
Yeah,
well.
deploying units.
Yeah, yeah. It's not gambling
He's
advice, man.
back in June. Yeah.
But he'll be back, and that's another decent bullpen arm potentially as well. Interested to see what Mantiply can do for them. There's good irons in the fire here still too. So this is a sneaky bullpen for sure. Gilbert Diaz in relief potentially could be nasty as well with that stuff ticking up. So they've got arms.
Could be fun. All right, 2 more teams real quick. The Giants. The Giants got better this offseason. Did they get good enough? Probably not. The offense as it stands right now, Pat Bailey is the catcher, Sam Huff as his backup. Okay. You've got Lamont Wade at first base. Wilmer Flores is his backup. Tyler Fitzgerald slotted to play second. Willie Adames, their big free agent signing at shortstop. Matt Chapman, their recently extended third baseman, is over at the hot corner. And then the outfield, Elliot Ramos, Jung Hoo Lee, healthy again, and Mike Yastrzemski with Luis Matos as the 4. Gerard Encarnacion
Hell
as the
yeah.
designated hitter. Hell yeah, brother. Bryce Eldridge is going to get there at some point in the summertime. I would assume June or July. All-Star break-ish is when I'm anticipating Eldridge to be there, but this lineup is fun. Does fun mean good? I'm not sold on that yet.
No, and I think there's some clarity that'll need to be had too in general. Just is Luis Matos a guy that ends up hitting his way finally into some more opportunities? Still just 23 years old, and he'll be 23 all year long. It's kind of a prospect fatigue candidate. Jung Hoo Lee is the guy that I've circled here, though. He needs to make, and he was hurt, so like, but he needs to make that leap to where he's a three-ish win player at least. Because when you look around the diamond, left side of the infield can be as good as any in baseball with Adames and Chapman. And what Ramos did last year is great. But I just think they need another player that you can trust to make an impact. I think Tyler Fitzgerald's a nice player, but I don't know if he is what we saw cumulatively last year.
Yeah.
Gerard, I love him. And I know the guys in Pensacola when he was there loved him. I know a lot of the Marlins farmhands still keep up with him and are very excited for him. But we'll see what he does, right? It was a surprise story out of Indie Ball. So what do you get from Wisely and some of these other players? Like, it's just another one of those situations where it is a big drop off kind of quickly. And I'm just kind of wondering who's going to pick things up beyond Adames and Chapman and even Ramos, who did slow down a little bit as the year progressed.
Yeah, I am curious to see what happens with that lineup. I'm also curious to see like how much runway a Grant McCray gets, if there's even space for him. I have
Yeah.
no idea how that's going to work with a Grant McCray, with a Luis Matos. These are guys that I don't, like I would like to see play a little bit, but I also don't know where they actually improve the San Francisco Giants. The starting rotation: Logan Webb, Justin Verlander, Robbie Ray, Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, Hayden Birdsong is the six. Carson Whisenhunt probably not far behind. Again, it's fun. Does fun mean good yet? Verlander being there, like this Giants team is very watchable. Like I
Mhm.
look forward to watching a lot of West Coast San Francisco Giants baseball.
Yeah.
But does that mean that they are a team that is going to win 83 games? I really don't know.
Yeah. Oh, and real quick before we move on, because I just forgot one more thing on the lineup side. I think this is the year Casey Schmidt takes a step forward offensively. Where he
Cool.
fits in, I don't know. I think if Fitzgerald is struggling, maybe that's where. But I just want to say I love what I've seen from Casey. I think Casey's going to be a good piece for them, maybe even just as a super utility type of guy there too. The rotation's solid though, and I think the big X factor here you might think is Robbie Ray. I think Robbie Ray is going to be fine. Is just can Jordan Hicks match what he did in the first half before fading
Yeah.
and kind of drag that out or stretch it out to 30 starts instead
Yeah.
of what was really 15 or 12 good, really good starts. So there and then there's several questions I think you could circle. You could circle, is Kyle Harrison finally going to be the Kyle Harrison that we've been waiting on?
Yeah.
Again, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't tabbed as a 4.5 ERA.
But Birdsong is not grabbing that job. I wish he grabbed that job from Kyle Harrison, but he hasn't
Yeah.
done that.
So they've got options, but I think you have a few variables here where if things all go right and you hit the parlay of Robbie Ray looking like Robbie Ray and Jordan Hicks stretching out the success longer and Kyle Harrison taking a step forward and Birdsong maybe forcing his way into the equation too and Verlander turning back the clock a little bit.
85 wins?
All those things happen. I think they could creep into the 86, 87. Ugh, no,
That's the
that's really hard.
thing. Like all that stuff happens. Do they finish third in this division?
It's funny because I don't see a way where they suck, but also it's really hard to see a way where they're fantastic as well.
Mm-hmm. They're signed up for an 81 and 81 season.
Yeah, the bullpen doesn't really
Bullpen
change
doesn't do
things
much
too
for
much
me.
either.
Like Ryan Walker, I love, obviously. I think that guy's a top 10 reliever in Major League Baseball, although my voting would say otherwise. It was just one of those where I actually saw everybody else was higher, and I was like, yeah, no, you're right. I should just trust myself a little bit more. But Doval, he bounces back. Tyler Rogers, he's still there. Eric Miller, Randy Rodriguez just
Miller's
was.
gross, by the way. I think he's going to be a big arm for them.
Eric Miller's gross. I think Randy Rodriguez is kind of gross. Like he
Yeah,
throws gas, and he's got I think it's a tight turning slider that I really like too. So, you've got all these guys, but it's not like it's an elite bullpen. You've got all these guys, but it's not like it's a elite rotation. And you've got guys that I look forward to watching, but it's not like it's an elite lineup. Like this is just a 500 baseball team.
it's kind of when we were using Dansby Swanson as the barometer for
Exactly.
average. This
Are
is
you the Giants?
kind of what this is, and they'll
Hmm.
be solid. And I can see ways where they're above average. I think it's more likely that they're slightly above average than slightly below. Like I think they're really strong average, but yeah, there's not a ton to dream on, I think, unless you get an Eldridge up there who takes the world by storm and Jung Hoo Lee makes a leap. And
Yeah.
uh, there's a lot of things that you'd have to see go right, but that happens all the time. It happened when they won 145 games that a few years ago.
Yep. On the flip side, Rocktober back on. Dolander against DeGrom. That was fun. The Rockies. Let's run through their lineup here real quick. You've got Jacob Stallings and Hunter Goodman as the catching tandem. Looks like Romo's going to go to AAA and figure some stuff out, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Tolia at first. He hit a bunch of homers last year. Tyro Estrada at second. That was an interesting pickup. Tovar at short. McMahon at third. The outfield looking like it's Nolan Jones, Brenton Doyle, Jordan Beck. Chris Bryant is the DH. Kyle Farmer, Sean Bouchard, Sam Hilliard fill out the bench. I am praying that Keston Hira makes this baseball team.
Oh, so much.
Begging,
He is. He's going to. He has to.
begging that Keston Hira makes this baseball team. And then you got Yankee Alvin, Greg Jones as outfield depth in AAA. Adiel Amador, whenever he's ready, that's when you swap in Amador for Tyro Estrada. But I would like to see him play a lot in Albuquerque this year.
I think I think Amador. We'll see if Estrada is a good bounce back candidate in this environment. Obviously, gives you plenty of value with the glove. I did like that pickup, but if it's not looking great, I do think Amador is a guy that is going to have a nice year this year after what was a very turbulent year last year. You can see the prospects getting close to being able to help here. Chris Bryant, I'm not going to hold my breath, but he's objectively swinging the bat healthier than he has. Does he sustain that? I don't know. But the bat speed and just the exit velocities are higher than they've been in years. In any stretch, even if it was a stretch of a few games when he was healthy over the last few years. So that's exciting and a huge wrinkle for them, of course, if he's able to swing it the way that he's capable of. Nolan Jones is the guy that's circled, though. Everyone talk about threads I've seen. Very popular breakout candidates, Michael Toglia, but for good reason. If Nolan Jones bounces back, who I picked on the show a few times as a guy that I think is going to bounce back and have a year he's more than capable of having. Toglia takes a step forward. Nolan Jones bounces back. I don't think you have to squint too hard or really think too hard to imagine that.
Yeah.
Tovar is Tovar, and I think he's only going to get better as he gets more ABs under his belt. This is a solid enough team relative to what we've seen in the past. I think this is the best Rockies team we've seen in a little while because they also have prospects who can come up and help. There's not as many obvious gaping holes, and there's a lot of young players that I do think are just going to continue to get better. Who knows if Brenton Doyle could take another step forward offensively. I do. It's relative. I do like this team relative to other Rockies teams we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And like, there's more optimism around this Rockies team than even 24, definitely 23. The projected rotation: German Marquez, Kyle Freeland, Ryan Feldner, Antonio Senzatella, Bradley Blaylock. On September 1st, assuming full health, what does this starting rotation look like?
Well,
I can put together my five if you want.
you got Gomber too, who should be healthy. It's shoulder soreness as of like March 2nd.
That's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that is a little nerve wracking because Gomber's been one of their more reliable arms over the last. Define reliable, I don't know, but one of their arms over the last few years. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot more fun of a rotation in September. But I want to say before we get there, German Marquez averaged 97 with the fastball last time he was out.
I'm really excited to watch him pitch in 25.
This is going to be probably, and not even September. I think you could say June, what this rotation might look like, or July.
In June, I think it could look like German Marquez. I think Feltner will still be involved. I think Freeland obviously will still be involved. And then I go Chase Dolander and one of Carson Palmquist or Sean Sullivan.
That's fun.
It is.
It's a lot better of a ball club. Senzatella gets moved maybe to long relief, but he's also maybe he's finally healthy, bounce back candidate as well. But a Marquez to Dolander, even 1-2, and Feltner is underrated given that he had a 4.5 pitching at Coors. Like that's 2.5 FWAR.
Yeah.
That's a fine 3 for the Rocky standards. That's probably the best 1-2-3 that they've had in a long time.
Well, and Freeland too, man. I'm thinking Freeland could be a fine 3.
Yeah, he survives enough there too. He's a net positive player in the eyes of WAR. You got to throw the ERA number out the window a little bit. Freeland's a guy that's been able to survive there. Yeah. So it's the best Rockies team in how long? I don't know. I'm looking at Rockies record by year.
It's just weird because they're sharpied into 5th place. So it's bizarre saying this is the
permanent
best
marker
Rockies.
that thing for sure into 5th place. But
yeah, but like
probably since 2018.
Man, that's crazy that the best Rockies team in 7 years is sharpied into last place.
Well, 2021 Rockies, you tell me if this is better or worse. Elias Diaz, CJ Crone, he had a sick year that year.
He had a great year.
Brendan Rodgers, Trevor Story, Ryan McMahon, Ryan El Tapia, he was horrible that year. Garrett Hampson, Charlie Blackmon was already tapering off at that point. Rotation of Marquez, Senzatella, John Gray. Yeah, this team might be better.
Probably.
Maybe. It's close, though. This is definitely the best Rockies team since we've done the show. I think we started right after that. Or definitely the best one since 2022. That I can comfortably say.
Yeah.
They're going to win more games than 68, 59, and 61, which has been the last 3 years, respectively.
Cool. Yeah, I think so, too. And this bullpen, just quickly to wrap. Hope Jeffrey Yan makes the team. I've yet to read that pass-in feature on Jeffrey Yan, but I'm excited for that.
I think
Jaden Hill is on the 40-man, which is interesting. Agnos, There's no reason for Zach Agnos to not be in this big league bullpen, but Halverson throws fuel. Tyler Kinley can spin it. Luis Peralta, Freddie's younger brother, was a revelation for them after the
Yeah.
deadline. They got him from the Pirates. And then you just have a bunch of other pieces that you can slap in here. They're going to try the Jimmy Herget thing, which is fun. Like human glitch at Coors. Why not?
Yeah. This is not a bad bullpen at all for Rocky standards as well. But Halverson and Peralta are the guys to watch here that, I mean, they could be big time swing and miss guys. And we saw it in a brief sample. Both went 12 and a thirds innings last year where they were dominant.
Yeah.
Those guys have big league stuff.
Yeah. All right. Predicted order of finish. I'm super chalky, so I'll just get mine out of the way right now. Dodgers 1, Arizona 2, San Diego 3, San Francisco 4, Colorado 5. Do I need to explain myself? Like, I feel like I don't because that's how everybody's going to order this unless you want to do something off the wall.
That's exactly what I've got to. I do think with the Padres moves, they could keep themselves in that second place equation now a little bit more.
That
But
2-3 fight is the only thing that I'll be monitoring in the National League West.
yeah, or if the Giants have kind of worst case scenario and the Rockies have best case scenario, but the Giants are too solid to I think taper off that far. I have the exact same 5, and I think everybody in America does.
Yeah, so there we go. Every link you need is in the episode description, including Arm's write-up on Lawrence Butler and our new
The top
Discord.
100.
And the top 100. Wow, I have 3 links here in the episode
A
description.
lot of links.
Yeah, but that's what we've got. And Peter and I will be back to do the National League Central wide open division, less chalky, on Wednesday. See you guys.